How are you? Good to see you, my holy brothers and sisters. Today we're going to open a new chapter, chapter 7 of Tractate Shabbos. And we're holding on Daf 68, page 68. Give people a chance to tune in, and let me get the YouTube in front of me. Whoa. Where is the YouTube? That's taking a moment to come in. Hopefully it's happening. Okay. Sorry. I just want to give people a chance to tune in, and then I have to vent a little. If you know me, you know I don't vent very much. I don't have a lot of complaints. But as my friend Mike Schofler in New Jersey pointed out, and we'll see if he's in the house here. Today I posted, here we go. Dominic Ariola's in the house, Yehudit from South Carolina, Crystal Dahlberg is in the house from British Columbia, Canada. Welcome, Crystal. Why is this not? There we go. James Roth is in the house from Indianapolis. Lindsay Adams from Ohio. Great to see you. Robin from Ohio. Great to see you, my holy brothers and sisters. And if I could just get that YouTube in front of me. I don't know why. Hopefully YouTube is in the house. I don't know. It's not showing up. Usually it does. All right. Well, I don't know. I'll just give that one more chance. There it is. Okay. Good. And on the YouTube side, Deborah Hazelwood is in from Florida. Great to see you. Okay. I'll vent for one moment. So today I shared a post on the Accidental Talmudist Facebook page and in the Accidental Talmudist Forum, which is a group, if you're not already a member, you should be if you're watching AT Daily. It means, you know, you're in the inner circle. You want to really be part of this. The Accidental Talmudist Forum is a Facebook group. And so, you know, with 1 million followers on our page, Facebook is not going to show every post to everybody. But with a Facebook group, it will. So if we go live, every time we go live, Nina shares it into the forum, and then for sure you'll be notified. Plus there's some content we only share into the forum. But today I shared a very simple message. I said that your neighbor loves her children, her parents, her children, and her neighbor. I got it wrong. What I said was, your political opponent loves her parents, her kids, and her neighbors just as much as you do. So let's debate solutions rather than motivations. I think it's a pretty simple message about, it's not just a nice thing to be civil and to have civil discourse in these emergency times. I would say it's necessary, because if we can't stick to the facts, right, to the statistics, to the conclusions, to the science, to what is before us, to the impact of policy decisions. This is a very nonpartisan message saying that right now we have to be able to speak together and debate solutions without assuming that people who disagree with us are terrible people and that they're motivated by, some kind of evil or greed or stupidity or whatever. That was the message. The arguments that are going on in the comment thread about that message are just crazy. People are doing exactly the opposite of what I said. And so Mike Schofler sent me a message. He said, well, that went wildly awry. I don't know what to say. Take a look at the post. The point of the post is, let's debate facts, let's disagree passionately. But let us assume that the people who disagree with us are also coming from a place of wanting what's best for their parents, their kids, their neighbors, our nation, right? Don't ascribe bad intention, That's all I'm saying. Let us not ascribe bad intention to our political opponents. Because when we do, when we tar them with our sarcasm, when we label them as idiots, as stooges, as evil, as greedy, as motivated by things that we would never be motivated by, is that effective advocacy? Are we going to convince anyone from the other side to vote our way? Are we not in emergency times? Do we not need to be effective advocates for good solutions? Come on, folks. Let us not call people names because they disagree with us. Let us not do that. Okay, that's my rant. Now, let's get back to page 68 of Tractate Shabbos. We are opening chapter 7 with the first Mishnah. And actually, this is very much a legal discussion with a big dispute among our sages. So, the Mishnah concerns the Iker of Shabbos. Iker means essence, the essence of Shabbos. And this is incredibly applicable now, maybe even more so than in the time when our sages were teaching, right? When the sages of the Mishnah were teaching, many of them lived when the temple stood, right? So Jews lived in Israel for the most part. Already there was a sizable community in Babylonia. But the community was less diverse, shall we say, than it is now. And the question that the sages are asking is, a person who is not aware that they're breaking the law, are they liable to bring a sin offering? Now, in the Mishnah, we look at 3 categories of forgetfulness. We're going to start the discussion by assuming that somebody forgot. So right away, the whole discussion is phrased, right, in a way that does not ascribe bad intention. People forget. I mean, they didn't do it on purpose, right? It happens. We forget things. So the Mishnah opens by saying, one who forgot the essence of Shabbos, meaning he doesn't know that there's such a thing as Shabbos and that Jews are obligated to keep Shabbos, right? So he doesn't know that Shabbos exists, and he doesn't know that Shabbos contains a whole bunch of laws which restrict, or some would say free, Jews from the prohibited labors on Shabbos, right? So, I mean, this whole tractate is about Shabbos, and we've been discussing a bunch of the laws that a Jew must observe. We can't carry things from a private domain to a public domain, or vice versa. We can't carry things in the public domain. We can't kindle a flame. We can't cook, etc. So what about a person who forgot? They just didn't know that Shabbos exists and that Jews are bound by Shabbos. And then at a certain point, he remembers. He learns that it's Shabbos, and that Shabbos applies to Jews, and that he's a Jew, and that he has been violating Shabbos, let's say, for a long time. Is this person liable to bring a sin offering? The Mishnah says, yes, this person is liable to bring one sin offering for all of the violations that he did, all the different categories of prohibited labor that he violated, on all the different Shabbats that he violated them. He just brings one sin offering, as an expiation for all of those violations. The second category is one who knows about Shabbos. He knows that Shabbos applies to Jews and that Jews are prohibited to do these labors on Shabbos, but he forgot what day of the week it was. He thought it was Friday, or he thought it was Thursday. This could certainly happen. People are shipwrecked on a desert island. They don't know when it's Shabbos. They don't have the calendar. They're just so busy. They're on a trip. Somehow, this Jew forgot that it was Shabbos. He knows what Shabbos is. He knows what it means to keep Shabbos, but he didn't know it was Shabbos. So that guy brings a sin offering for each Shabbos that he forgot. Perhaps his mind lost track of the calendar and he forgot several Shabbats in a row. but he brings a sin offering for each Shabbat that he violated, no matter how many different violations he did on each of those Shabbats. One sin offering per Shabbos. And the third category is the Jew who knows that Shabbat exists and that Jews are prohibited to do forbidden labors on Shabbos, and he knew that it was Shabbos when he did this activity, but he forgot that the particular activity that he did was prohibited. Now, we've been studying some pretty complicated laws of Shabbos, and certainly this is pretty common, that a person might not never have known or might have forgotten a particular law, that he was prohibited from, well, it's the example that we keep talking about, right? He went out, with something on his clothing. What do we have? We had certain, in the old days, jewelry, right? So it's jewelry. You're allowed to wear jewelry on Shabbos. But if for some reason that piece of jewelry breaks, and now you got to put it in your hand and carry it, okay, so you violated Shabbos. Now let's say you know. But what if you forgot? Well, like, I did it without even thinking about it. The jewelry broke, I put it in my hand, I just went home, and I'm like, oh, I was carrying on Shabbos. There, for that category, a person is liable to bring a sin offering for each category of Shabbos that he violated. So carrying would be one, or kindling would be another, dying, like if, all the labors necessary to build the tabernacle in the wilderness constitute the 39 categories of forbidden labor. So if, for example, you forgot for some reason that it was Shabbos and that you're not allowed to write on Shabbos, and let's say you signed your name once and wrote a shopping list another time, or you wrote one with a crayon and another with a pen, those are both the same category of writing, so you would just bring one sin offering for all of the violations within the same category. That's the Mishnah. That's the Mishnah. Now, in the discussion is in the Gemara, now we're going to encounter some disputation, right? So there's going to be a big dispute about how this Mishnah applies to certain categories of people. Now, the Gemara starts its discussion by asking, well, how could this happen? How could somebody, the first category, right? So the Jew who just forgot that Shabbos exists and that he's bound to observe Shabbos. How could that happen? The Gemara asks. In what situation could such a thing happen? They're just asking. They're not being sarcastic. They're actually asking, how could that happen? So the first answer we get is from Rav and Shmuel. Now, Rav and Shmuel are usually arguing with each other. Rav and Shmuel were in the same generation, and they were the heads of the sort of, the two biggest academies of Jewish learning in Babylonia, right? So in the Babylonian Jewish community, which is really the bigger and more active community than the community based in the Holy Land in that period. This is well after the Second Temple was destroyed and after the times of the Mishnah, so after about the year 200 of the Common Era. Rav and Shmuel usually arguing with each other, but in this case, they come together and they say, who is the Jew that forgot? This is one understanding of what Rav and Shmuel said is the Jew who forgot that Shabbos applies to him is a child who was taken captive among the Gentiles. So this is almost like a Tarzan story, right? Or not a Tarzan story because he was raised among non-humans, but basically, like a captive in war. That's what happened. So there was some kind of a war, and a child who was a Jewish child was raised among Gentiles as a slave. Perhaps he was like Moses. Moses wasn't raised as a slave. He was raised as a member of the family, but in a non-Jewish household. So you can bet that as Moses was growing up in Pharaoh's palace, he wasn't keeping Shabbos. The laws of Shabbos hadn't been given yet. This was all before Mount Sinai. But we also have a teaching that the patriarchs instinctively kept Shabbos. So there was a sense of Shabbos and other laws even before the Torah was given. Moses was like a child. He was a child raised among Gentiles. So he certainly wasn't keeping these laws as he grew up in the palace. Did he ever know those laws? I mean, Moses came into that situation as a baby. He was nursed by his mother. At any rate, this is the example that Rav and Shmuel give, not Moses, but a child, a Jewish child raised among non-Jews. That's one example. The other, very interesting, is a non-Jew who converts to Judaism among Gentiles. In other words, it's a non-Jew who converts to Judaism without getting a Jewish education from Jews, from rabbis. Now, this case is unusual, and it's only according to a minority opinion, just one opinion among many that says that this could even happen, right? That somebody could convert on their own and that it would somehow be, a legitimate conversion. We don't actually hold that way. In order to convert, you have to get a Jewish education so that you know what it is you're agreeing to do when you convert. You can't say, okay, I'm a Jew. It doesn't work that way. You have to get a Jewish education and then go before a based-in, a small court of people who examine you and see, did you learn? Do you know what the laws are that you're now going to be obliged to uphold? And then you immerse in a mikveh, etc. But still, even according to that minority opinion, it would be somebody who just basically found his way to Judaism, called himself a Jew, but didn't know that there's such a thing as Shabbos. So Rav and Shmuel are saying that is the person who forgot the essence of Shabbos, forgot the ikar of Shabbos, and so that person would have to bring a single chatas, a single sin offering for all of those violations that he did when he didn't know better. Now, is this to say that the one who knew and forgot the ikar brings a chatas for every Shabbat he violated, right? So if we're saying that the one who never knew what Shabbat was, right, the child who as a baby was taken to be raised among non-Jews and then never learned about Shabbos, or the one who was a non-Jew and decided to convert to Judaism but didn't learn about Shabbos, right? So he's bringing one sin offering for all of the Shabbats that he violated. So that would imply, well, the one who did know about Shabbos, but he just forgot in some way, well, then he would be held to a higher standard, right? Because he at least knew about Shabbat once. So is he going to therefore have to bring a sin offering for every single Shabbat that he violated? But that would contradict the Mishnah. The Mishnah says the one who brings a sin offering, a chatas, for every Shabbat that he violated is the one who knows what Shabbat is. He didn't forget what Shabbat is or that it applies to Jews. He just forgot that it's Shabbat. He lost track of the calendar. Right? And the Mishnah distinguishes between him and the one who forgot what Shabbat is. And so rather, Rav and Shmuel came to say that the child captive, the child who was raised as a captive among non-Jews, or the one who converted on his own, they are similar, they are like in legal status, the one who knew what Shabbat was and forgot what Shabbat is, forgot the essence of Shabbat. And this view corresponds with the view of Rabbi Akiva. And the view of Rabbi Akiva differs from the view of Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Yochanan and Reish Lakish were leaders in their generation in Israel, in the Holy Land. They were part of the Jewish community in the Holy Land, right? And an earlier community. And they, in their generation, were the two leaders, and they argued with each other all the time. But here in our discussion, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish are on the same side, right? They agree with each other, and they hold like a sage named Munbaz, and they hold, so Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish and Munbaz, they say that the child captive and the one who converted on his own are exempt, right? They say, no. These people who never knew what Shabbat was, they were never told what Shabbat was, how could we expect them to be liable to anything? They didn't know. They had no idea. Therefore, they're exempt. They don't owe even one sin offering for all of the times and all of the different violations on all of the different Shabbats that they did before they became aware of what Shabbat is and that Jews are obliged to uphold Shabbat. So Rabbi Yochanan, Reish Lakish, and Munbaz all hold that that person is exempt. The one who knew what Shabbat was at one point and forgot what Shabbat was and that it applied to him, that person brings a single sin offering for all of those violations on all the Shabbats. But the one who never knew is exempt. Akiva disagrees. Rabbi Akiva disagrees. And what the crux of the argument is making a distinction. Now, Talmud study is all about making distinctions. So Akiva is teaching us we have to make a distinction between the one who makes an unwitting transgression and the one who makes a transgression due to circumstances beyond his control. So, unwitting means he didn't know better. He didn't know because he forgot. He didn't know because he never learned. Right? A person who never knew the law, how could they be held responsible for violating the law? But just as in our society, right, if you go flying down the highway at 100 miles an hour and the cop stops you and you say, "What do you mean it's against the law? I never heard that." And you could be telling the truth. You know you could be telling the truth. Maybe you never heard that. Maybe you were in a time warp. Maybe you come from Germany, where on the autobahns, on those super highways, there's no speed limit. I don't even know if that's still true, but it used to be true. And maybe that person is a tourist in America. He's on the highway. He can't even read English. He doesn't. He's a long stretch on the highway in Montana between speed limit signs. He doesn't know. He never heard this law that you can't go more than 70 miles an hour. He never heard it. Was unaware of it. Is that going to get him out of the ticket? No, it's not. And Akiva would say that even though these people never heard of Shabbos, the actions that they took when they violated Shabbos, they weren't coerced. They weren't drugged by some other person, like they were slipped the drug and then they behaved in a way that they never would have done if they were conscious and in control of themselves. They just didn't know better. Now, he's not holding them to some kind of intense responsibility and accountability. He's just saying, you owe one sin offering for all of those sins that you did during your entire, the entire period of your life where you were unaware of what Shabbos is. Or if you forgot and you just really didn't know what the essence of Shabbos was, for whatever reason, you lost your learning, you had an illness that actually stripped you of part of your consciousness, of your mind. For whatever the reason, you didn't know that you were doing something wrong, but you were in control of yourself. So you are liable to bring the one sin offering for that entire lapse of knowledge that the thing was prohibited. On the other hand, somebody who violates due to circumstances beyond their control, this does not include ignorance of the law. Circumstances beyond your control means somebody put a gun to your head. Like you really had no choice. You were coerced. You were controlled. Somebody slipped you some kind of a zombie drug and then they controlled and manipulated you. You didn't choose to do the action. Only in that case, according to Rabbi Akiva, are you exempt from bringing a sin offering at all. Now, when we hear this, our first instinct might be, well, it seems unfair. The child who was raised among non-Jews and never educated what Shabbos is, the non-Jew who was pulled toward Judaism because he heard some beautiful teachings and just called himself a Jew, but was never educated in Shabbos. Why would he have to bring a sin offering to somehow make up for that period of his life where he was violating Shabbos without knowing that he was making a violation? And the answer is because he did those actions. It's not an onerous liability that you owe. It's just to bring one sin offering for all that time. Not only for, it's actually a few more sin offerings. You would bring one for all of the violations of Shabbos. You would bring a different sin offering for all of the violations of eating forbidden foods. You would bring a different sin offering for all of the violations of idolatry. And it's actually saying, it's good because it's giving you a kind of personal accountability and saying, well, I learned at a certain age, I could have learned earlier. Or, I did eat forbidden foods, but I just kind of knew that idolatry was bad. I had an instinct against that, so at least I didn't violate that during that period of unawareness. Or I did all those things, and now that I'm a new person, I would like to do some kind of purification for all of the stuff that I did when I didn't know better. I had a moment like that when I was in Uman a couple of years ago. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but it's a beautiful, enormous Rosh Hashanah celebration in Uman, Ukraine, by the graveside of a great tzaddik, a great righteous person named Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, who's buried in Uman, Ukraine. And there's a huge gathering. 80,000 Jews come every Rosh Hashanah and bring in the new year together and sing and pray, and it's so elevated. And you really, it's a very spiritually uplifting experience. And in the midst of it, I was praying by the graveside, and I faced something in my past, and I'm not going to share, that if I had known then what I know now, I would not have done that activity in my youth. So it's very similar. I didn't know better. I did not know at that time. I did it. I didn't think about it. I didn't feel guilty about it. Now when I look back, I did that. So we don't have the opportunity to bring sin offerings anymore in the temple. What has replaced sacrifices at the temple is prayer, teshuvah, atonement, and tzedakah, charity. And because I did those things in my youth, I think, I want to pray harder, I want to give more money to charity, and I want to make a more sincere and far-reaching atonement, not only in this category of behavior, but in other categories of behavior. And so facing up to something that I did when I didn't even know I was doing something wrong is healthy for me. It's not victim blaming, it's not blaming the ignorant, it's not holding people to impossible standards. It's giving people an opportunity to face who they were and allowing it to motivate them to do more in the present. And I think that's what Rabbi Akiva's opinion is all about. And in fact, in this dispute between Rav and Shmuel on the one side, who are following the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish on the other, who are following the opinion of Munbaz, the halacha has been established with Rabbi Akiva and Rav and Shmuel. So even the child, the child captive who was raised among non-Jews who never educated him about Shabbos, when he learns what Shabbos is and starts to keep Shabbos, so he wants to make an atonement for all those Shabboses he missed. And the fact that he's now more attached to Shabbos and thinks, I missed all of those Shabbats, it's going to make him, it's going to motivate him to keep Shabbos. It's going to make Shabbos even more dear to him for the rest of his life. And likewise, the sin offerings that he'll bring for the other types of violations. Only one for all of the Shabbats he violated, but one more for all of the idolatrous practices he engaged in, one more for all of the forbidden foods he ate in during that period of unawareness. Okay, so that's the important thing, distinguishing between the unwitting sin and the sin that's due to circumstances beyond one's control. Unwitting means I didn't know better. Beyond my control means I was coerced or manipulated. It wasn't me in charge when I did that. Why does Munbaz make that distinction? It has to do, it just sounds more fair not to hold that person responsible for something they didn't even know. But what Munbaz actually looks at is a juxtaposition in the Torah between the unwitting sinner and the intentional sinner. And it says that both are called sinners, and Munbaz derives from that, and that's at Numbers, Bamidbar, but Numbers, the book of Numbers in the Torah, chapter 15, verses 29 and 30, that in those two verses, the unwitting sinner is called out right next to the verse in which the intentional or the high-handed sinner is called out. And Munbaz learns from that juxtaposition that both of these people at least knew at one time what the law was, and then, well, the intentional guy did it anyway, and the unwitting one did it because he forgot. He forgot something. He forgot what the law was, or he forgot that the law applied to him, or he forgot what day it was, etc. But at least he knew at one time. Whereas that child captive or the self-convert never knew. That's a distinction that Munbaz makes, and that's his source for it. But the law follows Akiva and Rav and Shmuel, and the one who never knew, when he finds out, is like the person who knew the law and somehow forgot that that law existed and what that law was and that it applied to him. And all three of those, the one who knew but forgot, the ones who never knew, bring one sin offering for that entire period of unawareness. That's what I've got for us today. Let me check the comments and see, okay, if anybody has questions. Brandon Christian Sullivan says it's best to side with Akiva on most things. Yes, it is. And in fact, one of the reasons that the halacha goes in this direction and we hold the one who didn't know liable to one sin offering for that entire period is because, as a general principle, in arguments between Akiva and Munbaz, and in arguments between Akiva and most people, the halacha is with Akiva. As a matter of principle, the halacha is with Akiva because he's, in many ways, our greatest sage in terms of his acute reasoning and analysis. Mike Schofler is listening. Good for you, Mike. I hope you heard when I mentioned your name earlier and how you commented to me that my post about calling for people to, debate solutions rather than motivations went wildly awry. So I'm glad you're here in the class. Henry Levkov is in from Alabama. Welcome. Barbara Johnson from BC in Canada. It's great. Great to see you all here. Rita Claris is in from Warminster, Pennsylvania. Lynn Job is here with us from Texas. And she says, did you talk about the ant yesterday? I don't think I heard you bring it up. Yeah, I did talk about the ant. And laying your sin on. That was yesterday. You'll see it in yesterday's class. I think it was at the beginning of the class. And any new questions? Janice says, thanks, AT. And Lindsay says, wonderful. And so does Robin. Great. Oh, and Claudio Quadros from Brazil. How cool. How cool that we have people in the house from Brazil, from Canada. Yesterday we had South Africa in the house. We recently had Pakistan in the house. I mean, we're learning, we're using the technology for good. This is an absolute good that we are studying Torah together across continents. This is something the sages never could have imagined, but I guarantee that they would have approved with no dispute. It's fantastic that we're learning together. Why? Because Torah scholars increase peace in the world. And when we look at, this post that I mentioned earlier that's on the page that I put up there today, that was about civility and ascribing good intentions to our political opponents, met with a bunch of people, making fun and sarcasm and really insulting and offending people who are on the other side of the aisle. That's just not the Talmudic way. I mean, the rabbis could be they would even be harsh with each other sometimes, but that never ended well. The key is not to be harsh or insulting. The key is to stick with the facts, to stick with the teaching, and to sharpen the mind enough to be able to say to somebody who disagrees with you, hey, what is between us? What do we agree on and what do we disagree on? What exactly do we disagree on? Because, if we both have very similar values and what we're disagreeing on is how to get there, okay, then by studying, the statistics that we're examining or the results of certain policies that were enacted in the past and what happened, the results of, a plague that happened before and how people handled it and what they're going to do now, if we sharpen our minds so that we can draw careful and sharp distinctions between the proposals before us, and we could stay at the table together without getting so offended and offending each other that there's no argument possible, well, then we're going to be a little bit closer to solving the major problems of our time. Let us sharpen our minds and keep this attitude of desiring peace with the people we disagree with so that we can arrive at the necessary solutions for all of us. That's what I've got for us today. Sending you all big love. Oh, Shlomi Zainz is in the house, and he says, hello from Israel. It was great talking to you today. Shlomi Zainz, I hope I'm saying that right, Shlomi, is a great writer with a podcast. He writes for Ami Magazine. And I mean, this is a totally Hasidic-looking guy with the payas and the beard and everything, like a Jew. And he writes columns in Ami Magazine about traveling the most unusual places for a real visible Jew to go. Saudi Arabia, Cuba, other places in the Mideast where Jews don't normally go. And he writes about his experience, fantastic articles. He also has a podcast, and today I was a guest on his podcast. He'll be releasing that soon, I believe. And then we're going to have him on our podcast. So watch for that. That's what I've got for us today, my holy brothers and sisters.